Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the American Kinesiology Association's webinar entitled Building the Kinesiology Brand. It's time for your campus and community to know what you do, with Dr. Jeff Lynn, Exercise Science Program Coordinator at Slippery Rock University. My name is Kim Scott, and I am the Business Manager for the AKA and Facilitator for today's presentation. This webinar is scheduled for an hour and will be recorded and available for playback. By the end of the day tomorrow, you can expect an email containing the link to the recording. The link will also be available on our website under the announcements section on our homepage. As you already heard, the microphones and phone lines are muted, so we ask that you communicate with us using the GoToWebinar features. So when you submit questions, please type your questions into the question box located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and click Send. We'll collect any questions sent throughout the presentation for Jeff, and he will answer as many as possible during the Q&A segment at the end. First, I would like to give you some background information on Jeff. Dr. Lynn earned a bachelor's degree in business management and finance from Kent State University. He worked for 6 years as a financial analyst and business consultant before returning to school to earn a PhD in exercise physiology. He then spent 2 years as a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. In 2003, he moved to Slippery Rock University, where he became the assistant chairperson of the Department of Exercise and Rehabilitative Sciences and the coordinator of the Exercise Science Program. He has overseen a growth in the exercise science major from 200 to 800 students, now the largest major on campus, and from 7 to 12 faculty members. He recently rewrote part of the university's strategic plan, adding a focus on wellness, and is currently leading branding initiatives related to health, wellness, and fitness. Dr. Lynn is a member of the National Media Committee for Exercise is Medicine, and he is spearheading Slippery Rock's version of the initiative. Dr. Lynn has successfully brokered relationships between campus healthcare providers, the recreation center, and qualified exercise professionals to bring Exercise is Medicine to life in the community. He has been instrumental in shaping the brand of exercise science, kinesiology, on campus and in the regional community. So now that you've heard some background, I'll go ahead and hand the mic over to Jeff. Thank you for joining us, Jeff.
Thank you, Kim. I'd like to thank the American Kinesiology Association and Dr. Wojtek Hodgko-Zyko, who I think this was his idea to begin with, to give me this opportunity to share with you something that I've had a real interest in and done quite a bit of work in over the last several years, and have got to enjoy some success in recently. And even though our program here at Slippery Rock University is called Exercise Science, I think the entire message remains the same whether we call it exercise science or kinesiology, at least the message that I want to share with you today. So I can advance my slide here. There we go. So just to start out with, as Kim mentioned in my bio, I started at Kent State University. I do have a degree in business administration and worked in that field for a while, and then eventually went back to school to get a PhD in exercise physiology. And the reason I want to go back over this for a minute is to bring up something that does definitely relate here. I remember as a graduate student knowing that my diploma, my PhD, was going to be from the School of Physical Education and be a physical education degree. And I knew that someone else who was taking all the same courses as me was going to have a degree called biomedical sciences. And I remember thinking, well, I want that name, because even at the time, realizing the branding that was attached to physical education versus biomedical sciences was very different. Even though our education was going to be identical, I had an acute awareness of that. And I think that that's some of what maybe is even agitating to some of us when it comes to the branding of kinesiology. And I want to address that just a little bit today. And so I did end up here at Slippery Rock University, where I've been for the last 10 years. And again, working on a lot of the things that Kim mentioned, and I won't repeat those. Instead, I want to go straight to my objectives for today. And what I want to do is, by the end of this, and I want to be as efficient as possible. We're all busy, and but I think there's some benefit to learning a bit about this branding. But I want to move along and get out what I want to get out and give you opportunity for questions. Hopefully, by the end of this, you'll be able to define and describe branding if you're not able to do it now, and understanding why it's important. And create a framework for identifying your brand wherever it is that you are, and start to establish a plan for building that brand both internally and externally, and then create a plan for managing that brand as you go forward. I want to do that by talking about some sort of broad strokes when it comes to what I believe are the essential pieces that have to fall into place to make it work. Then I want to talk about a specific case of how it has worked for an academic department, because this is somewhat unusual for academic departments. And I'm going to use Slippery Rock as a case, and hopefully you'll be able to pull some things out of that can work in your particular case. And then just a couple of thoughts about kinesiology at the much bigger level and what we might be up against when it comes to branding kinesiology. I want to start by saying that I don't have a single original thought. Everything that I'm going to share with you and everything that I've used has come from somewhere else in my learning. And I think the easiest way to direct today's webinar is to give you some tools that you could continue to use once today is over and you can actually put into action. And I think the simplest way to do that is to use a text that was a bestseller, Jim Collins' Good to Great. And this is something that you could even have your faculty read to give them the framework that they might need, or maybe better yet, and it's a dated piece of literature now, 1996 from Harvard Business Review, but Building Your Company's Vision. This was also from James Collins, and this predates the Good to Great book. But it's also much shorter than the book, and it gives some framework for what I think has to be done before an effective brand can be established and managed. And then you can see I also have here Good to Great for the social sectors, which is much shorter, and it specifically takes a look at how some of the useful pieces in the Good to Great book can be used in the social sectors. I'm also a fan of Inside Drucker's Brain, and the reason why is that Drucker's really the creator of modern management, going back all the way to the 1950s, and believed in management by objectives. And the reality is, and Jim Collins would, I believe, argue correctly, that the key to running a good academic department is not to act like a business. That's not the idea. But the key to success and the key to becoming great in any endeavor has some similar themes. And management by objectives is one of those themes, and I think Drucker was sort of the grandfather of all that. And then Managing Brand Equity is sort of a seminal text by David Aker that it's mostly about business, but it does give some interesting insight into how brand has been used. So again, nothing that I'm going to say here is original, and I've really designed this to come straight from the Good to Great text so that you could take that and use it for yourself and hopefully have some success if you decide to implement some of the things I'm going to talk about. I also want to mention right away that at the meeting, the American Kinesiology Association meeting coming up in late January, there's a pre-conference workshop by Gil Reeve about leadership strategies for departments in strategic planning. And I think that what I'm about to talk about for a little bit here would work very nicely along with that strategic planning talk, and I have a feeling there's a good bit of overlap. So, first of all, there's a lot of ways to define brands, and for a working definition for our purposes, I'm calling it the perceptions and feelings attached to your program, faculty, and students. And I've used these words very carefully because perceptions and feelings are different than thoughts. So they're going to include thoughts, but it's certainly different. And that's why I wrote brand is a lot like a reputation. What do people think of you do? What do people think about the quality of your work? And how do people feel when they think about you? And this is where Peter Drucker's management strategies that I mentioned before really come into play, because one way to think about this is close all your doors and have your group sit together and talk about what you think people think of you. And that's never going to be real. So occasionally you got to get away from the mirror and get closer to the window and get out and find out, what do people really think of you? What do they think of kinesiology? What do they think of your students? And that's a starting point. And so if we think of brand as more like a reputation and feelings people get, I think that's a useful place to start. And as far as understanding brand goes, and thinking about value in branding, I put a few things up here just to stimulate some thought in managing brand equity. Apple iPod, I think, is a great example. Apple's a company that has done an exceptionally good job at branding. I would say that more people think that the Apple iPod is the best system for what iPods do relative to all the other systems. Is it? I really have no idea, but they've certainly done an excellent job of making the market believe that. Similarly, Harvard Business, Harvard Law School, do they truly provide a superior education? I don't know. And I don't know if other people know that or not, but again, their branding is such that when people hear Harvard Business or Harvard Law, you tend to get a feeling or a perception without necessarily any facts that go along with it. And then a little closer to home here, think about biology, physical therapy, medical doctor, kinesiology. So there's no question that there's a branding, at least in communities that I'm accustomed to, that have a certain feeling and a thought when it comes to biology and physical therapy and medical doctor. And then a thought when it comes to kinesiology. And the important thing is, how do we manage our brand to show the value in it that's already been managed to show the value in things like physical therapy, medical doctor? Folks seem to have a much, even if they don't know specifically what a physical therapist does, they seem to have a better perception of them. I shouldn't say better. It's a different perception. And then finally I have on the slide Kmart versus the Disney store. And maybe I'm just expressing some of my own prejudices here, but when I hear Kmart and when I hear the Disney store, I have two very different feelings about the brand. And I want to talk about Disney in particular because it absolutely relates to how I want to frame this. I studied Disney as a business student, and what was interesting to me is they had a very, very specific marketing strategy to try to create a web that you couldn't help but get caught in almost no matter which way you turn. Now, I don't have children, but I have nieces and nephews, and I've certainly been around enough children to know that Disney has very successfully done this. And in fact, the Mickey Mouse character is one of the most recognizable characters on the planet. Disney has done a great job of managing brand equity, and it's all been done on purpose. And there are some things that we can all learn from what Disney has done. Think what you want about Disney. There's things that we can learn from what they have done that can absolutely benefit us in our endeavors to create and manage a brand. So why bother? In case that you tuned in thinking, I'm not even sure why I'm tuning in, but I'm going to do it anyway. First of all, it is good for the business. And make no mistake, our departments are part of the business. And so whether it's running our program more successfully or ultimately we answer to the university and making the university a more successful endeavor, having a positive brand and a strong brand is good for both. The reality is we need resources. And those resources come in all sorts of forms. But here at Slippery Rock, and again, I'm going to share some of our case with you, but we've been able to leverage a lot of faculty members based on our success and the success of our brand. We've leveraged a new building in addition to that new building, all sorts of money and even some other relationships that maybe I'll have a chance to share here towards the end. But there's no question, high school students, parents have choices, and why should they choose us? This comes down to brand. And not only do they have choices between biology, physical education, kinesiology, athletic training, you name it, but also which university are they going to go to. We know that all universities are not created equal. All kinesiology programs are not. And I actually try to capitalize on that when I try to engage in branding with some of our constituents, and I'll share that with you. Employers and grad schools also have choices, and we want them to choose our students. And I would say that's a vital metric of our success is our students getting into the grad schools and getting the jobs that they want to get in a competitive marketplace. Also we need to attract and keep excellent faculty. And that's, as I'm going to continue to talk here, becomes maybe more important than you realize when establishing a brand. And finally, and this is a little bit different than the other bullet points I have on here, is it forces us to articulate a plan and enact a purpose, and that's hard to do. But in order to be successful in creating the brand, we have to have a very specific plan, and we've got to enact a purpose that we're all striving for in the same way. So one of the first things that I think is important to do is, if we're going to focus on branding, we have to know who are our constituents. You can call them our customers, call them whatever you want, but who are the people that matter? And this is a short list, not meant to be exhaustive, but I would recommend that wherever you are, you come up with your list, and I would think that it would at least include this group that I've got on this list, but it could certainly include a lot more. So clearly our students, and notice in parentheses I said our parents, and if your program is anything like mine, whether we like it or not, we work more and more with parents. And the reality is parents are often the resource engine for their students, and so they do feel like they have at least a financial stake, and so that they certainly can't be ignored. Other students on campus, I found here at Slippery Rock University that the branding that we have done has come through very strong in students from other programs. Not always positive, but very strong, and this does matter. How about high school students and parents? Clearly we need to keep a stream of students coming into our programs, but not just students. Ideally, we would be getting the top 10% of every high school class of students that comes in. That's probably not happening. It's probably not likely, but it might be something to strive for. We all know that everything's going to work better if the students come in well prepared and serious about their education. Trying to get those students here in the first place is a function of both the student and the parent thinking that this is an appropriate major and an appropriate place to study. Our administrators, that goes back to getting resources and working with teams to make things successful. And again, I'll share some specifics eventually. The other faculty at our university, if you had to sit right now and honestly ask yourself, what do the other faculty think of kinesiology and what kinesiologists do and the quality of the students that we produce, often the answer to that question is not in line with the true value of the students and the education that is provided. Not to mention our research and everything else that we do. Obviously the communities, both the local community and the greater community across the country, if we think about what it is that people think of kinesiology, kinesiologists as a profession and as an academic discipline, and then our own universe. Our constituents certainly include all of us that work within these fields. So creating a framework, and I've specifically used that picture because instead of thinking of constructing something physical, I think it's better to think of trying to grow something, and I would suggest to you, in order for this to work, that we need to think like farmers. And I happen to live in an area of the country and grew up in an area of the country where it's easy to do that. Lots of farmland all around here. But what do farmers do? They have to have a very, very clear objective well in advance of when they want to reach any goals at all. It takes detailed planning and hard work well in advance of reaping benefits. Cultivate, facilitate, and maybe one of the most important things is be patient. You have to have a disciplined and unwavering belief that what you're doing is going to work eventually. So then you get to reap the benefits eventually. And you reap the benefits not like a revolution but as an evolution. And I realize that might sound like a trite expression, but I think that if we try to do something to make our brand strong and then a week or two later try to figure out if it worked, we're going to be sorely disappointed and quit and move on like so many people do with their exercise programs. So overarching piece of advice is think like a farmer. When it comes to establishing vision, this is I'm going to follow along the texts of Jim Collins here from that Good to Great series that I mentioned. The first thing that must happen, and by the way, I'm not suggesting this is easy, but the first thing that has to happen is establishing core ideology within your program. This is not trying to say what we would like to be. This is being very introspective and saying this is who we are, this is what we stand for, and this is why we exist. And the suggestion is that these are things that are so embedded in our DNA that even if they became a competitive disadvantage, we would still stand for these things because these things are what's so important to us. And these are going to be derived from the individuals that sit around the table in your meeting. And so your program is a collection of those individuals, and what it is that they strongly believe and stand for, that is ultimately going to become your brand. And this is partly why hiring decisions are so important, and trying to put the right people in the right spots that have a belief in the mission and in the core values is really, really important. Because you can't hire somebody and then try to get them to believe in the core values and the core ideologies. You have to bring people in that already believe in them. But clearly you start with a team already assembled. And so you've got to get that team together and talk about what it is that we stand for. And if this seems a little vague, I'll try to put some details on this in a little bit here. But they've got to be, the core has to be very, very clear. And the vision is the description of our preferred future. And I gave examples on jimcollins.com. He's got some great workshops. And although I've never actually done the workshops as they're written, I think there's some excellent examples of businesses that have been highly successful that have a very clear vision, an envisioned future. And they can articulate that. And that's something that's not necessarily easy, but this is the first step that absolutely must be undertaken. So you've got to put some time into this, and I definitely don't think it's easy to do that. So what would your program look like in the perfect world? What is the greatest value of your program? And again, this is a collection of the attitudes and aptitudes of the people in the program, because trying to be something that the people in your program is not, and they don't have the attitude or the aptitude to execute on, will absolutely fail. It will never be a brand that is solid and identifiable that you can manage along the way. Important question to ask. Can we be all things to all people? And I already know the answer is no. There isn't a program that can do that. So here the question then becomes, if not, what can we be our best at? And I use the words carefully, our best, because obviously you don't have to be the best in the country, but you've got to figure out what it is that your program, what is our program going to be able to do that we're going to bring out our best. And again, that's going to be a direct reflection on the attitudes and the aptitudes of the people in the program, because if we can allow people to a large extent to do the things that they like to do and that they're good at, that's where we're going to get the most productivity out of people, and that's what's going to shape who we become. Because if we try to just force people into a core ideology that isn't their own, then they're never going to do what they could do otherwise. Potentials won't be reached. All right, but we have constraints. Obviously, there's constraints. Everybody has constraints. But just like a client who wants to lose weight, there's all sorts of constraints, but we need to focus on what it is that we can control. And again, this is out of the Jim Collins book, but it's important to think of building a pocket of greatness. So it's not an excuse to say, well, but the university won't give us more faculty, or the college doesn't see the value in what we do. Those are wonderful excuses, but there's no point in trying to build a brand and trying to become great at what you do if you're going to allow those things to stop your progress. So you've got to figure out what it is that we can be our best at, that we really want to do, that we really like to do, build a culture around it, and build a pocket of greatness. And I think taking one of the highlights from the book that Collins mentions as an example is, if we think about can you survive and thrive in an environment that doesn't seem to be conducive to thriving? And I love the example of, if we look at business return on investment from 1972 to 2002, that's a 30-year period, and we look at all of the businesses that were out there, major businesses in the United States, and had to try to guess which business had the greatest return on investment, so that if you invested $10,000 in 1972, which business would have made you the most money? And the answer to that is Southwest Airlines. And I find that to be really intriguing, because the airline was not an industry that you would expect would have had the greatest growth when you think about the bankruptcies and the mergers and the regulation and the oil problems and on and on and on, the management problems that people had. Yet Southwest Airlines, by way of creating their own pocket of greatness and adhering steadfastly to a management strategy and a brand strategy, did better than every other company during that period of time. And I like that example, because it really illustrates the point of quit talking about what's getting in the way and start working on how to get where it is that you want to go. So building a plan for building your brand. All right. The next very important thing is a consistent message. I mean, and this is really a very simple little bit of ideology here. Of course, if you've got different people within the kinesiology group sending different messages, you're never going to have a consistent brand. So, and so the analogy that I like is everyone rowing in the same direction, and I put that picture on there because all it takes is one person on that rowing team to row in a different direction, and the whole thing is shot. So definitely everyone has to be in agreement that we're going to try this. You got to have some faith and work on this and try to make it happen. And so everyone has to be telling the same story. And that includes interacting with our students. One of the things I realized here, we experience growth that a lot of other kinesiology programs are experiencing around the country. Tremendous growth, maybe more growth than we wanted. But we realized that as a function of the university, we needed to absorb that growth because that's what the university needed. But what was happening was we were finding that the faculty in our department were talking a lot about class size to our students. And what we found is our students were listening to that and then saying, well, class size has gotten too big, we just don't learn as well as we used to. And this is fascinating because how can you say you didn't learn as well as you used to? You weren't even here when the class size was smaller. But they were picking up on what the faculty were saying. So we put a moratorium on talking about any of that. And luckily we had a faculty complement who were all in agreement that, yeah, it didn't make any sense to go tell the students that this was wrong because that wasn't ever going to get us anywhere, and all it was doing was hurting our brand. The website. If you have a website and you have worked on a brand, then you absolutely need to be thinking about, does your website reflect your brand? Also, whatever the printed materials that you have are. Clearly, any printed materials have to reflect this. The admissions office, I meet at least once or twice a year with the admissions office to make sure that they're telling the right story and sending a consistent message. Also, the recruiters that work along with the admissions office and the advisors. Now, we as faculty advise our own students, so either the faculty themselves need to be sending a message, or if you have advisors that are not part of your faculty, they have to be on board and be sending the right message. And then obviously any other signage that you have. And again, one of the things that we've done here is we have a very health focus, a clinical health focus, so that if we have a lot of signage or things on our website that would suggest strength and conditioning, for instance, or group fitness, for instance, then that works in opposition to the brand that we're trying to have here at Slippery Rock, as an example. All right, a couple things here that I believe are important. People tend to believe what we tell them. If our program is amazing, we'll tell people. Make sure that you tell them it's amazing. And if not, we'll tell them what is good about it. Several years ago, we put into place a strategy where anytime we talked about our program to outsiders, we were going to use things like excellent and one of the best, elite, terms like this to describe our program. Now, that didn't mean from the day before we started doing that till the day we started doing this, anything changed. Nothing changed at all. But we decided that we were going to start to include those words anytime we could as speaking points. And as a result, we've started to hear it echo back from internship supervisors and graduate schools and faculty around the university and other students. And I don't think that's an accident. I think that's a direct result of us putting it out there and letting it come back. And then, but I added an Emerson quote here. You can say all you want. If you don't actually do it, then it's not going to matter. So there's also got to be some disciplined action to back it up. All right, now, like I said, I wanted to share a case study with you to put some of this to life in terms of specific kinesiology. And I know in advance of this that the program that I'm going to talk about is quite different than most. Everybody's program is different. But there might be a few things to pick up from this that are useful. Slippery Rock University has about 9,000 students, and it's mostly an undergraduate college. There are some graduate programs, including a doctorate in physical therapy program. But in 2005, I had been here a couple of years. We had about 400 majors, and we had grown from 200 majors in the 3 years prior to that. 45% of our grads were going to grad school, which of course means 55% were going straight out into the workforce if they could find jobs. which is important because those are the students that we were preparing, and we needed to prepare them for success. We had a grad program at the time that had about 30 students, and I had taken over that grad program after having been here for one semester. Probably not a great idea, but that's how it worked. And we doubled the number of graduate students over the course of a couple of years because that's what we were asked to do. At the time, we had 6 faculty members, and we had a good reputation. But if you know anything about the long-term branding history and reputation of Slippery Rock University, it's been known as a teacher's college and a powerhouse in phys ed. Well, our exercise science, or it could have been just as easily called kinesiology, had grown from the physical education department and created its own department along with the athletic training program. So that was what it looked like in 2005. Now in 2012, we have 800 majors. And again, I think I'm going to be preaching to the choir here. 800 majors. We are the largest major on campus. And in fact, our major is larger than the School of Fine and Professional Arts. 90% of our graduates over the last 2 years went to graduate school, leaving only 10% either going straight to the workforce or looking for jobs. Grad program closed. This is really important. And again, I'm going to go back to that Good to Great book because this can be a very good guidebook for you. In as much as we needed to figure out what it was we needed to do once we established our core ideology, it's just as important to figure out what you need to not do and what to stop doing. Alignment becomes really important. Otherwise, there's no point in having a core ideology, and there's no point in coming up with a strategic plan if you're not going to make sure that it's in alignment with what you've said you're striving to do. Is this going to get us to our objective? Is it part of our core ideology? If it's not, we got to get rid of it. So I had proposed to close the graduate program, which was becoming one of the more successful on campus. I met with some pretty serious pushback from the provost and the president of the university, but they allowed it because we were already starting to build a brand of success, and we convinced them that if you just let us do this, we'll become one of the best undergraduate programs in the country and probably the premier undergraduate program on the campus within just a few years. So they begrudgingly let us do it, and we funneled all of our resources into doing what we wanted to do and what we did well. Because when we looked around the table and said, who has a real passion for this graduate program, everybody was looking down. Nobody really had a passion for it. So again, attitude and aptitude, it made no sense to funnel resources into a program that nobody wanted to carry. So we closed it, and we focused on undergraduates. We now have 13 faculty. Our reputation both on campus and in the area has become very, very strong. And it's interesting because if we ask students around campus, what is the most rigorous program on campus? I know it's because it's been done. Exercise science, again, that's what we're called here. Exercise science comes out as number 1 over and over and over again. Not necessarily because the content knowledge is so difficult, but because we've decided to make our program very rigorous, and we've made our expectations very high. And we all know the reality is most people will rise to the expectations you set if you don't let them off the hook, and that's what we've done. And so we've taken over a lot of leadership positions on and around campus, and we've also forced our students to reach a very high level, and that has provided us a reputation of rigor such that even, like I said, even the admissions people and the recruiters, when they're talking to high school students, will say that if you're going to go into exercise science, you need to realize it is the most difficult and most rigorous major on this campus. And I realize that's not the case at other universities. So we use that using the old philosophy that many people will want to be in the club that they can't get into. So once they find out that this is the elite at Slippery Rock, that actually draws in more high-quality students for us. The other thing is, as we grew and we were being successful, we argued that we needed a new building. And we got the new building. And there was a lot of renovations that went into the new building in order to build us. It was actually a dorm. And we said, we're going to need to tear down walls, we're going to need to tear down ceilings, we're going to need new equipment, we're going to need. And the university made it happen. And then a couple of years ago, we said, now we need more space because we have some specific things that we want to be able to create, and we want to spend an awful lot of money in there. And it took a while. It took a lot of work. But as of about a month ago, we got our occupancy permit, and we have a $2 million addition to the building that we're in right now. And that comes from working very closely with administration. I'll give a couple of examples of that as I move forward here. So our core ideology, this is not complete, by the way, but I just want to give you a glimpse into some of the results that we had when we all sat around the table and spent, by the way, many, many months of 1 hour and 1.5 hour meetings going back and forth and talking about this and arguing and saying, well, why this and why that, and disagreeing, and that's fine. But this is what we ended up with. And by the way, this is what alignment has to match. So in a meeting, if somebody says, this is the direction I want to go with something, or I want to start a new program, or I want to change this or do that, it has to pass the litmus test. It has to be consistent and in alignment with our core ideologies. So every agenda, I create the agendas for, we have weekly meetings, and every agenda at the bottom in small font has our core ideologies spelled out. So it's very easy to say, is this in alignment with who we are and what we're trying to do? Is this students first? Is this science-based from top to bottom? Now, the generalist approach, I want to explain just a little bit about this, because I think that we've all realized that kinesiology has become a platform for success in many, many fields. If you study kinesiology, you can go and be successful in many, many graduate programs or many career fields. So we realized that what we were doing, and what we were doing well, is having a generalist approach. We were not preparing people to be clinical exercise physiologists, nor were we preparing them to be strength and conditioning coaches, nor were we preparing them to teach physical education. But what we were doing was giving them the foundation and the transferable knowledge and skills to be successful regardless of the direction that they went. And that becomes a very, very solid selling point and a solid branding piece for us. We decided we were going to have a health focus. And this is because, again, when we looked around the table, there was, out of 13, there's one of us who has a real serious, strong interest in strength and conditioning. Everyone else around that table has more of an interest in health and clinical science. Academic and professional rigor. This is something that needs to be instituted at all levels, from the freshman level all the way up to the senior level. And students don't become professionals by accident. You have to have specific touch points throughout the professional development of the student that are accessible to some degree, to make sure that there is some the professional development that you want going on. So for instance, we have a senior level class where our seniors would work with clients in the recreation center, clients from the community. And our seniors would never consider going and working with their client without professional dress. So they're wearing generally khakis and an exercise science polo. It wouldn't even be a consideration. And so other majors on campus kind of sometimes chuckle at our students who are dressed in their uniforms. But our students benefit greatly from the branding that comes with that, and what is instilled in them about professionalism, certainly well beyond what they wear when they leave here and they go on to graduate school or elsewhere. Leadership and pioneering spirit was another part of our core ideology, because we realized that we were pretty good at taking control of things and having vision and making things happen, and not necessarily trying to follow what everyone else is doing, but coming up with our own way to do it. We have faculty members that get great joy from being creative, and in fact, one of our highlights is finding creative solutions to complex problems. We have a senior level class that starts at 6:30 a.m. because that's when it worked. And that class fills. We have a sister class to that at 4:30 on Thursdays, but the 6:30 a.m. Wednesday class fills first, because our seniors want to get that class, and we knew that was a creative way to solve a complex problem that we had. So these are some of the litmus tests that any new idea must pass. How about matching brand with plan? We did, and I would highly recommend doing, a SWOT analysis. So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I'm on the advisory board of another program that I helped them do a SWOT analysis. And what was really interesting to me is there can be a very big difference between one program and the next in admitting weaknesses. There are people, and there are probably even programs, who have a lot of trouble accepting critical feedback and accepting their own weaknesses. But this is absolutely critical. I don't know how you can improve if you won't accept what you're weak at. But also focusing on the strengths, because again, that's going to be the major part of the brand. And then opportunities and threats are going to help to guide strategic planning and creating long-term objectives and goals as you move forward. I've mentioned before the attitude and the aptitude of the team members. We actually do this every year. So every year we take our faculty and ask them, what would you most like to teach? What would you least like to teach? If the team really needed you, what would you be comfortable teaching? Are there any new classes that you think should be developed? What are some strengths that you think you have that aren't being used? What are some weaknesses that you think you might need help on, et cetera, so that we can keep this moving forward all the time and it continues to evolve. We've focused on learning reconsidered, and this has helped our brand immensely. And this is the idea that facilitating the growth of the individual happens both in and out of the classroom. That what we're trying to do is develop a whole person. And so we enjoy having programs that aren't necessarily in the classroom, that we know students are applying content knowledge and learning, putting things into action and actually acting. And that has allowed us to, that means our students are engaging in activities outside of the classroom, in the university, and in the community that they're learning from, that they're also visible and they're showing professional competence in what they've learned while they're out there doing it. And simple examples are blood pressure day, and actually there's a few other things I'm going to mention here in a minute. Because the other thing about matching brand with plans, disciplined alignment, and again I mentioned this before, it may be even worthwhile to designate somebody on the team, if you're going to go through this process, to be the person who consistently asks that question whenever something comes up, whenever the next idea comes up. And so what you need to do and what we've done is discipline alignment in the curriculum. So does the curriculum truly reflect the core ideologies, the strategic plans, and our long-term objectives? Same thing with our extracurricular activities. What about our advertisements? And then, and maybe most crucially moving forward, is hiring. You notice the numbers I put up earlier. We went from 6 faculty to 13, which means we totally retooled this team. And because we started to institute these ideologies early on in the hiring, we were able to hire people not so much for their technical expertise as for their passion for the cause first and foremost. They wanted to educate students. They wanted to have rigor in the classroom. They wanted to make things better. They wanted to see improvement. They wanted to go from good to great. And those are the people that now will take what their specific attitudes and aptitudes are and will build a program around it, because that's what makes a winning team. I have a picture of the cover of the book Academically Adrift, which can, in itself, can have some emotional responses from people, because it was a pretty scathing indictment of higher education. But it was done with data, and I don't think it can be ignored. And we looked at this book, and we looked at some of the data in it that suggested that students don't get much better, if any better, at critical thinking and some other very important tools that they should be getting out of college. And we believed it. So we had our group sit around the table and asked, are our students where they ought to be with critical thinking? Let's talk about that. Do we, semester after semester, talk about, well, I taught them that last semester. I don't know why they're coming to your class and saying they don't know it. Or I'm not sure why they can't synthesize physiology and create programs that are specific for physiologic adaptations. Well, I mean, the reality is that our students weren't that good at critical thinking. And so the only way to make them better was aligning our program in such a way that critical thinking had to be part of the way the curriculum worked, and it had to be accessible. And so maybe luckily for us, but again, part of it is who you get on the team. We were able to put some creative solutions into play, and see if I have time to talk about some specifics about that. I'm not sure. But managing the brand, so last section here of the talk. This is a picture from our website. And it's on our website because we consider our website to be part of the branding and part of the marketing. And when high school students and their parents come to our website, this is one of the first pictures I want them to see. First of all, the picture itself is kind of neat. You got the little homunculus muscle guy in color, and everybody else is in black and white. It's creative. We're creative. We're exercise science / kinesiology, but I don't want them. I know that most of the students that have come to our program want to be a physical therapist, want to be a DO, want to be something like that. And I realize that looking at a picture like this says, yeah, that's the direction that's going to take me where I want to go. So this is just an example of just a tiny little morsel of alignment with the brand. So some of the on-campus branding. At this university, there's a wellness expo every year, and we have embedded in one of our senior classes where they go and present information in wellness booths, up to 20 of them. And the important thing is that they are scrutinized on their quality to the nth degree, every little thing. It drives them crazy, but by the time they show up at that Wellness Expo, they have the best quality projects of anyone there. And they also have had education in marketing and how to get out and get people to come and participate in whatever little attractions or games they might have at their booth, and be able to provide public education in a very specific and high quality way. Personal training with exercise is medicine. This has become part of our branding, and I mentioned at the senior level we have a class where students are out there interacting and actually having a client from the recreation center. And in exercise is medicine, when students go to the health center at Slippery Rock University, the health center has got on board with us to make an extra question at the end of their vital signs. So the 6th vital sign is asking them about their physical activity. If they don't get enough physical activity, they can ask if they'd like to be referred to someone who could help them put a plan together. If they say no, maybe they're pre-contemplators, they'll get a pamphlet. Maybe that's the end of it. But if they say yes, they can get referred to a program that we control wherein our interns can guide them with one-on-one personal training if they're ready for personal training. And they might not be. And the way that we would know that is we've embedded in the program motivational interviewing, which comes from clinical psychology, to make sure that our students have some specific tools in how to work with people in a very specific way to try to help guide them toward their goals without simply telling them you should do 3 days of cardiorespiratory exercise for 20 to 60 minutes for this. That never ever works. So we've specifically put that into place. We started a wellness committee. This is part of our leadership and pioneering spirit. The university didn't have a wellness committee. It does now. And we've become the first chairs of that committee, and we've got it approved by the university. We started a health, wellness, and fitness consortium. The way that we're set up here at Slippery Rock is that we've got different programs that that are not housed in the same department. But we realize that we all have a lot of the same objectives. So we're working together to create a brand to suggest that Slippery Rock is the place that you might want to come regardless of whether you're interested in health, wellness, or fitness, because we all work together. And in order to do that, we have to advise appropriately to know how we can maneuver students around to the correct major for them. Because here's what happens in exercise science. We're going to lose 30% of all of our incoming students, and we know that. But almost all of them are going to stay at the university because we're going to give them advice that's going to get them to a new home in physical education, therapeutic rec, public health, parks and rec, and athletic training. And as long as everybody's playing together and not having turf wars, this can be done successfully. And then the other piece of the branding is serious play. So we put together flash mobs. The students absolutely love it, and it gets great energy out across the university. And when our students do these flash mobs, at the end they actually hand out little bits of educational information. We've had a pedometer program that both students and faculty can participate in, and every student and faculty that participates in fact, even those who don't, know that that's coming from our department. And we do data collection with that, and there's a lot that goes into that, but I won't get into the details. Also with fun, random rewards. So we actually had a little bit of money and got lots and lots of T-shirts, and then we rubber banded messages about exercise to these T-shirts, and we've had some of our more gregarious students go out with these T-shirts, and if they catch people exercising, they reward them with a T-shirt. We also have Frisbees. This became huge. This became the talk of the university. Students were coming to our department and asking, how can I get a T-shirt? But the only way to get one was to be found exercising somewhere on campus and be given a T-shirt with the message. And by the way, the message read something like, I agree to wear this T-shirt and to continue to be active and share with others the profound effect exercise has on health and wellness. And that was rubber banded to the T-shirt. And now I notice I have my little picture of Mickey Mouse here again, because what we've tried to do here is the same thing I mentioned that Disney has tried to do. On this campus, it is now difficult to go in almost any direction without running into something that is positive branding about our program. And then I also have a picture of the Run Club there. That's highlighting one of those learning reconsidered extracurricular activities that's fun. And what I don't know if you'll realize is half the people in that picture are actually faculty that were taking part in a Run Club event and dressed up. All right, strategic planning. I'll be very quick about this. First of all, the strategic plan now has to be aligned with the core and vision. So I believe jumping straight to strategic planning without having done the things that I talked about earlier is not going to get you where you need to go with the quality that you want to get there. The university mission whatever it is that we're trying to achieve as a department, as a program, has to be somehow tethered to the university mission. Otherwise, how does it make sense within the whole corporate structure? An advisory council is useful, and this is to keep us from sort of the emperor's new clothes. This is to keep us from closing the door and thinking that we're really great. We definitely need feedback from outside, and an advisory council that might be made up of internship supervisors, faculty from PT schools, DO schools, PA schools, employers in the area, other faculty members can be very useful to tell us how we're doing. Quality circles of students all the way up from freshmen on up can help us at least give their perception on how we're doing. And then the consortium, and I mentioned the consortium is with the other departments that are here on campus. And the picture that I have there is actually people sitting down to the provost, the president, and the dean of our college, and then standing are four of the faculty members. And this was just one of the initiatives that we got management buy-in for and ended up getting a little marketing mileage out of it. So I want to sort of, I guess, finish here with the last couple of thoughts here with kinesiology in a little bit bigger picture. The physical education teacher, what is the brand? Physical education teacher, personal trainer, a public health professional, pseudoscientific alternative medicine technique, because by the way, if you Google kinesiology, that's one of the things that's going to pop up. So and the reason I put this up here is not to answer the questions, but to direct us towards making sure that we're very clearly addressing what are the differentiating factors of us as kinesiologists. That's a critical question. One of my faculty members right now is working on her PhD on an online wellness program, and she's in there with several physical therapists, and the physical therapists are convinced that kinesiology doesn't know anything that physical therapists don't know. So if you got a PT degree, certainly you know everything about PT and everything about kinesiology, because what is kinesiology? That's clearly a giant gaping hole in our brand. So sort of want to not quite finish but nearly be finished with, so you want to be and this is the reality here, and I'll bet it's the reality in a lot of other programs as well. Students come in here because this is a stepping stone for them, the PT, MD, DO, OT, PA, keep the list running. Here's the reality as far as I see it and as far as the branding that we're able to use here. Kinesiology is a human science. A lot of other things that you might study at the undergraduate level are not. So you're going to be, what you're telling me, young senior in high school, is that you want to work with humans. Well, why not study an undergraduate at the undergraduate level, something that's going to make you better at working with humans? And in fact, working with humans in movement, because movement is medicine. And you're probably not going to learn how to use that technique in PT, MD, DO. So why not learn it in your undergrad, so now you have a much bigger set of tools that you can take with you to be successful in your career. Also, study what you like. If you don't like chemistry, if you don't like biology, if you don't like fill in the blank, then why are you going to study that as an undergrad? Study something that you like, and if you're interested in kinesiology, there's a good chance that you like this. So why not be really good at something that you like and something that you know is going to set you up well and prepare you for graduate school and for a career and give you tools that you might not have otherwise. And if you study kinesiology, think about it. If you change your mind, options are limitless, and I think every one of us can tell a good story about students that we've had that study kinesiology, and now they're doing X, Y, Z, because they chose to study kinesiology, which maybe is a generalist discipline. My final thought, branding imperatives. First of all, you and the team, we and our team, have to have an unwavering belief in the value of kinesiology. Otherwise, what is the brand? If we're going to have a brand that's really not so good, it's something you can study if you can't study something else, then why bother? We have to have an unwavering belief in its value. Disciplined, consistent action on point. And this means both doing and speaking the realities of our brand and what we agree on behind the closed doors. And by the way, behind the closed doors is important, because you've also got to agree that you'll admit weaknesses, and we can fight it out, and we can feel like a closet full of broken toys when the doors are closed. When those doors open and we go out and we're talking and we're acting in public, we're on the same team and we're presenting that positive brand image. And finally, rigor in academics and professional practice. Part of the problem is people sometimes think that what we do is a joke compared to other sciences. We know it's not, but they don't know. And in order for us to have a long-term approach and hope for success, we've got to maintain rigor in both academics and in the professional practice. So with that, I'd like to say thank you. I would be happy to try to answer any questions in the bit of time that we have left. I've included my email on this slide that I would scribble it down quickly if you want it, because I'm going to go to the next slide in a second. I'm happy to share any other insights, give clarifications, consult along the way if I may do that. And then I'd like to leave this slide up and see if I can answer any questions that might be out there.
Thanks, Jeff. That was very good. We did get a couple of questions coming in. So one person has asked if you would be willing to share your form provided to faculty members regarding attitude and aptitude.
Yes, I would be happy to do that. So I'm not sure the best way to do that. If maybe that's something that either through AKA or through you.
Right, I can do that for you. If you share it with me, then I can share it out with all of the attendees.
I would love to do that. I think that would just help to generate success.
Okay, another question. Could you talk about the tagline that you created to summarize such a complex brand idea?
The tagline, I'm not sure that I totally understand the question.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Let me see. Wayne, I just unmuted you. Do you want to expand on your question?
I just sent it in text. The tagline is the short phrase that summarizes your brand, your vision, your core that you're trying to sell as your identity.
Okay. Yeah, so here I'm not sure that I would say that we have the one tagline, and I would I believe strongly that we get caught up in wordsmithing sometimes. And if I look at a lot of the successful corporations in the United States over the last 40 years, their lines, their branding lines, and their missions even have changed, but the core ideology is not. So we have talking points that are our core ideology, and so I would say that the core ideology pieces are the branding lines. And so when I say things like students first, science-based education, a generalist approach focusing on transferable skills, focus on health, academic and professional rigor, leadership and pioneering spirit, this encompasses the brand. And so it's not necessarily a tagline for us, although it might be for others. And I don't want to discount your point, though, because taglines and logos are used extensively and used very effectively. But it's also important that we don't confuse the two. So I think if you can come up with a tagline and or a logo and those sorts of things, that's great. I don't know that we've had great success doing that, and I really struggle with spending a lot of time wordsmithing.
Okay, another quick question for you. How do you get the faculty to buy in for going through the process you outlined?
Okay, this can be one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult part of this. The way that we set it up here is ask everybody, ask them, not directed them, but ask them if they would either read the article that I had presented earlier from Harvard Business Review or the whole Good to Great book, and we bought copies of the book for them to look at and gave them plenty of time to look at it. And then we talked about the value in having objective-based management. And in fact, didn't just try to say here's what we should do, but sort of talked about why wouldn't we do this? What is it in life that we do that we don't do better if we have a clear-cut objective, and that we don't put a plan together and have behavioral goals and execute on that plan? And it's almost like creating an argument that it's very difficult to be against. Like, does anyone in the room think that we'd be better off if we didn't have objectives? I mean, and I wouldn't say it that cavalier because that wouldn't fly, but the idea is sound, and it's hard to not think that idea is sound. And so we started from a framework of let's try to understand what might be valuable in doing this. And let's talk about, think about it this way. If part of our core ideology is going to be uncovering what you are good at and what you would really like to do, that's going to drive our core ideology, then why wouldn't you be on board? Because this is going to allow you to do what you want to do. And you're going to thrive by doing that. And that's going to help everything, because individual successes drive programmatic success. There's no question about it. So I think the way to buy in is to think like a farmer. It's going to take a long, slow time. It's going to be deliberate. You've got to have people understanding what is the ultimate objective. Am I just going to come to a meeting to kill time? Because I don't have time for that. So that's got to be clear at the outset. We've all got to be on the same page.
Great. One question that came in, someone said this is a really good presentation and they'd like to share it with their department faculty. And they're wondering if the recording will include not only the audio but also the slides. And I just wanted everyone to know, yes, it will include both the audio and the slides if you do want to share it with your faculty. And Jeff, we are out of time. Do you want to take another question, or are you ready to be done?
I am happy to do whatever works best for people. And,
okay.
And by the way, I know that some people have to run off and have classes and have other obligations, etc., or that this might not be the most appropriate forum to get an in-depth answer, and that's why I wanted to make sure that my email was available there.
Okay. Well, I can email all the attendees and let them know. I'll give them your email address. So if you want to just do a real closing comment, then we'll let people go then.
Sure, happy to. First of all, I want to go back to the slide. If you still have the slides up, the slide up that's up now in the middle bullet point there. And honestly, I don't know Gil Reeve at all. But when I look at what that talk is going to be at the AKA, the pre-workshop session on effective strategies, this could not fit more lockstep, I believe, with what we're talking about now. Because I think that without having any background in management or branding, it's too easy to try to jump 2 or 3 steps ahead of where you need to start. So the take-home message here is that we first have to start in-house and be introspective and look in the mirror and figure out what it is that we can do really, really well. Then we can start to roll it out in a consistent manner and enact the programs that we know we're going to do well at, and that becomes the brand. So a brand isn't something that you say, we want this to be our brand. It's a brand that you discover and uncover over time, and then you manage it and you make it strong.
Great, thank you. And also, just if you attend that pre-workshop session, the actual workshop is free. So one or the other you can attend for the same price. And we invite you to go to the website, americankinesiology.org, and check for more information about the pre-workshop session and the workshop on diversity. So, and as always, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer about the association as well. So thank you all for attending. Thank you, Jeff, for a great presentation. And we'll look forward to you attending future webinars. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.